Hey everybody, this is John for MTG Nexus coming at you with another deck guide. It's been a minute since we've done deck guides, and there's quite a few decks still to cover in the modern format. That said, this one's going to be a bit of a tongue twister to explain, and that is Neobrand Combo, or Neobrand. This is one of those old turn 1 win decks with Simian the Spirit Guide that assisted with getting the card banned. Basically, with Simian Spirit Guide, Chancellor of the Tangle, and also Gemstone Cavern, you had the potential to go a turn 1 Neo form in a lot of different ways, get a Gristlebrand into play, and kind of go nuts from there. This is very much a high roll, low roll deck. It can be explained by really setting up the combo and then executing the combo. Now, first off, in order to execute the combo, you need one of each of your sets. You need either Neoform or Eldritch Evolution, and you need either Allosaurus Rider or Summoner's Pact. What this enables you to do is Allosaurus Rider is one of the weird pitch spells from Cold Snap that allows you to exile 2 green cards from your hand rather than pay its mana cost, put it into play. Okay, from there, you either cast a Neoform or an Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing it, ideally putting a Gristledad into play. Now with Gristledad, you just draw your deck. You draw 7 to 14 cards, hope to find a copy of Nourishing Shoal. Nourishing Shoal is also a weird pitch card out of Betrayers of Kamigawa. Allows you to exile a green card rather than paying its mana cost to gain X life. So what this allows you to do is when you have big idiots like Otacron Worm or Turn Tim Symbiosis, Chancellor of the Tangle, you get to basically gain 7 to 14 life, draw a bunch more cards with Gristlebrand. Ideally, you want to get to a state where you have only a few cards left in your library, and you're just constantly drawing cards, endurancing things back, Nourishing Shoal, and drawing cards, putting things back. Eventually, what you try to set up is a situation where you have division of 7. 7 cards in your library, 14 cards in your library, whichever it is. And then you do this weird setup where you try to get all of your copies of Allosaurus Rider into play, which is kind of weird and different from how the deck used to operate. You get Gristlebrand, 3 or 4 of your Allosaurus Riders into play, and then at some point you have an Endurance that you're going to pitch cast. So what happens is you go to your cleanup step after you've drawn your entire deck, gained a bunch of life, done all these weird things, and then as you're pitching cards, you want to make sure you hold on to a Chord of Calling, and if you have to, an Endurance to be able to pitch cast. So normally during your cleanup step, you are not able to take any game actions. It's just literally discarding your hand or down to 7 and then going from there. But because this deck plays World Spine Worm, what you're able to do is discard World Spine Worm to trigger the shuffle back in effect. And in response to that shuffle trigger, you can then cast Chord of Calling for Thassa's Oracle. Ideally, you Chord of Calling with Thassa's Oracle with no cards in your library, or maybe 7. With the Thassa's Oracle trigger on the stack, you draw 7 with Gristlebrand, and then the trigger resolves, you win the game during your cleanup step. Very convoluted, but very much what the deck is, the main version of the deck is doing anymore. The rest of the deck is all about card selection and protection. Serum Visions as the card selection spell of choice. Pact of Negation is kind of the protection spell you see in the main deck. And obviously Zern Orb is a way to gain additional small amounts of increments of life by sacrificing the few lands you might have in play. If that sounds extremely convoluted, it is, but since it lost Simian Spirit Guide, the decks had to get a little bit creative with how they win. Most of the other 2 variants that we will be looking at, as well as a third one I'll mention because I haven't actually seen anybody do well with this list recently. But basically it all comes down to how do you win once you get a Gristlebrand into play. It's really all the variances in these lists are about these days. The sideboard, Leyline of Sanctity, burn, discard spells, Veil of Summer, discard spells, counter spells, Pact of Negation, fighting over counter spells, and sometimes game-winning hate pieces. 4 copies of Beseju helps you blow up anything like Chalice of the Void, Leyline of the Void, etc. Anything that might get in your way from executing the combo. 1 copy of Gemstone Cavern to speed you up on the draw. A couple copies of Fading Hope to bounce any, creatures, maybe like a Thalia or something that would get in your way. And that is this variant of Neobrand. Let's go into the couple other variants. So this variant is a little bit different. So essentially what happens with this one is you execute a lot of the same thing. You're still trying to get an opening hand with a copy of Allosaurus Rider or Summoner's Pact. You're still playing, playing your Allosaurus Rider, Neoforming it, Eldritch Evolutioning it, Gristle Branding it, trying to draw most of your deck, shuffling it back in if you have to with Endurance. And then you're trying to find and cast another copy of either Eldritch Evolution, whatever. Basically what you're trying to do is you're getting to the point where you're looping your Mox Ambers, tapping them for mana. As you're doing this, you tap them for mana and you continue to cycle with Endurance while drawing cards with Gristle Brand. Eventually you get up to 4 mana, cast your Aetherflux Reservoir, cast a few more spells since you've already cast probably 10, 12 spells during the turn at this point. Gain a bunch of life, dome your opponent for 50. One other alternative way is Springleaf Drum, Heritage Druid, setting up for Thrasta Tempest's Roar. Now this is a card that is a little unique. It's 12 mana casting cost, so you are never Neoforming or Eldritch Evolutioning for this. But it costs 3 less to cast for each other spell you've cast this turn. Ideally what will happen is you'll get either a Springleaf Drum or a Heritage Druid or some other thing in play. Allows you to tap for a couple of green mana. You'll cast this later in your loop cycle with Gristle Brand, Endurance, and Nourishing Shoal. And then you'll cast Thrasta. Your opponent can't target it. And then this 1 of, or sometimes 2 of, copy of Fortifying Drought. You gain 2 life. Target creature gets +X/+X, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. Basically, even though your life total may not be more than 7 to 14 by the time you're done Gristle Branding, with all the life you've gained with Nourishing Shoal, you're going to have a big beefy boy that's going to hit for a lot of damage. And generally, that's a one-shot kill in addition to Aetherflux Reservoir. And that's kind of how this variant kills. Both having either Thrasta or Aetherflux Reservoir, once again playing off of the weird combination of things. You also weirdly have 1 of Atraxa here, 1 of Atraxa in the sideboard. You also have a Coma. So basically this is going for more like a value gameplay in case you feel you can't combo through, say, hate like Leyline of the Void or Rest in Peace because you have to loop with Endurance. Instead of doing that, you just kind of sidestep by getting one of these other big dumb legendary creatures. Atraxa, obviously a huge amount of value. Coma, very hard to kill, although Solitude is a thing, so don't know how reliable that is. And then rest of the sideboard, Leyline in the Void for any type of graveyard nonsense. Veil of Summer whenever you're fighting over counter spells and discard spells. Pact of Negation, protect the combo. Beseju, once again, allows you to blow up any potential hate cards. So this version is a little bit different, a little bit not as focused in the main deck, and may cause you to fizzle a little bit because of you have more engine pieces in this deck rather than as far as your win con, you have more engine pieces, but a little bit less convoluted and a little bit less reliant on the graveyard. And then 1 more variant. This version doing a lot of the same things that we already kind of talked about with Thrasta, although it's a little bit more in on the Thrasta plan. Basically, you're trying to get to the point where you do your Gristle Brand loop, you Thrasta, play your Fortifying Drought, smack your opponent really, really hard. The one other variant of the deck I've at least heard in passing is Bryant Cook mentioned a variant with triple gut shot. So what I'm guessing happens with that loop is when you're looping with endurance, you're gut-shotting your opponent for 3 each time. And yes, you're using a large amount of life. But what happens is once you get a certain amount of life and you're looping your deck, it's the same number of gut shots. You know, say you're paying 6 life to deal your opponent 3 damage, and then you're just kind of gut-shotting your opponent to death. So, reality, you basically have 4 possible win cons once you get the loop set up. You have Thraxa Beatdown, you have the copies of Aetherflux Reservoir, you have the Thassa's Oracle cleanup step, Court of Calling nonsense that seems to be the most popular variant right now, and then you have the gut shot variant. I think the Thassa's Oracle kill is probably the cleanest of the various different versions. But, you know, there may be some reasons to play the Thraxa build if you're fearing a large amount of graveyard hate, especially graveyard hate that can be played fairly early. You're really not too phased by something like Endurance, but it does hinder you if they're playing like Rest in Peace or Lane Line of the Void, which can be relevant because format does have decks like Living In and Dredge in it, so sometimes people do bring graveyard hate for the party. I know this has been a lot to take in. We'll try to do some gameplay videos with it. Otherwise, Bryant Cook has done some video work on it, and I'm sure there are other people out there who have touched this deck. But Bryant Cook, I think, does the most consistent work with the deck. As far as performances, the person AZAX has probably done the most consistent with this deck over time. It looks like this is like their bread and butter. Like every time there's a 5-0 with Neobrand, they're almost always the person whose list is on it, and they're the one doing well with the challenges. There's also a few other. Sandy Dog used to play this for a little bit. Someone whose username I won't say because it sounds like very sexual innuendo. But yeah, this is Neobrand Combo, one of the more convoluted decks in the format, but does have the potential to win on turn 1, especially if you have either Chancellor of the Tangle or a Gemstone Cavern on the draw. And this is Neobrand Combo. We'll try to do some gameplay video on it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you for our next video.